when I ask you a question, you're gonna sort of repeat it. See, because they're not gonna hear me asking you the questions. Can I move up farther?
Where?
Or I'm not gonna be in the way. Am I over here? Like this.
Okay.
And the other thing, I have to do something. I have to do something with that light sometime. Cause it's like I'm blind. I can't see you.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It looks good. Come a little towards the camera.
Oh, see, no, I can't. Okay, I'm gonna be like this. Okay.
He wants me to look as close to the.
Is that all right?
Just at TJ, yeah.
Just a minute.
When you go more to the right, I see a reflection in his glasses. This way it's just fine.
Are you all right? Okay.
Sure.
So when I say, where were you born? You say I was born.
Where was I born?
Not yet, but I mean when you say that, I say, you remember Pearl Harbor Day? Pearl Harbor Day, I was.
At Pearl Harbor Day, I was in school.
Okay. All right. So here we go. So first of all, you're going to tell me your full name. Were you born in Felton?
No, I was born in Bridgeville, Delaware.
Nice. I had my first beer in Bridgeville, Delaware.
That was I come from those Crpl boys down there. I'm one of the Adamses.
Oh, I think I had my first beer at my first fireman's parade down there.
Yeah.
I think.
That's are you?
Many years ago, probably in the early '60s.
Oh Lord.
Oh yeah. You're going to tell me your name, where you were born.
Yes.
You know, and then what year you were born, what your mom and dad,
Yep.
growing up. So,
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
You're going to ask me questions,
No,
or
you're going to just tell me.
Oh, my name is Richard Adams. I was born in Bridgeville, Delaware on September the 7th, 1924. My father was a bus driver and a salesman, and my mother taught school. And I was the second son. My older brother, who was 2 years my senior, was killed in service on June the 2nd, 1944 in Italy. We are the only two children because my father died when I was a year old. And my mother and my brother went to live with her mother and father. And in 1925, we moved from Bridgeville to Canterbury, a little town of Canterbury. And we stayed there 3 years with my grandmother's cousin, and then my mother bought the little farm that is down on the Canterbury-Milford Road, known as, I think it's Route 33 or 35. And I was raised there on the farm and entered got my draft notice when Pearl Harbor Day came, and I was 17 years old, and I had no fear of being drafted into the Army because the war has never lasted 2 or 3 or 4 years, and at the time they were drafting, the draft age was 21, so I didn't think that I would ever be caught in the service because that was 4 years and the war wasn't going to last that long. Well, the next year I turned 18, and in September, and they dropped the draft age 2 or 3 months before that from 21 to 18, and it struck me right in the face. And when that day I turned 18, I got my notice for draft, and I got a 6 months deferment because I was on the farm, and then they needed more replacements, so I had to go and got my notice, and I went into the service in October the 8th, 1943, and reported to Camp Dix, New Jersey. I had just spent a few days there, and then I was sent to Camp Crpl in Spartanburg, South Carolina, for my basic training. After 17 weeks of infantry basic, which ended in February, I was sent home for 10 days delay en route to report to Fort Meade over in near Baltimore, Maryland. There, and after being there a day or so, I was informed that I was on the next group of replacements that would be going overseas. And one evening, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess it was, they got us up, and we took under cover in the darkness of the night. We moved to Newport News, Virginia. And then in the bright daylight at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they took us down to the harbor, unloaded all these German prisoners and loaded us onto the boat, and we went overseas. I landed in Casablanca, North Africa, and then they put us on a train and took us across to the North Africa to Algiers, where I was at the seaport, boarded a boat, and next I landed in Naples, Italy. From Naples, Italy, I took another boat up to, all this happened in a period of about a month. I'm taking a long time to tell it, but it was a short period of time, and I landed on Anzio, which is probably known, if you've ever read any of the World War II history, it's one of the bloodiest areas that they were. And it lasted from January until May the 21st or 23rd, something like that, and we had to kick off, and we took Rome, and it fell on June the 4th.
Well, hold up. Now, you went from Naples to Anzio?
Yes.
So you were in. I mean, you were fighting.
I didn't fight till I got on Anzio.
Okay, now, when you were in Naples, did you get assigned now to a permanent unit, or you were going to be a replacement?
I didn't get assigned till I went to Anzio.
Now,
I went to a Crpl depot in Anzio, and there there was so many of us, and some went to the 3rd, the 36th, and the 45th Infantry Division. I was in the 45th.
In Anzio?
Yeah, and on Anzio, yes.
Then you just started battling?
As soon as I landed, within a day, I landed there in early April, and within 2 days, I guess, I was on the front lines after landing on Anzio. I moved awful fast because they give me a truck, put us all on a truck, and the truck took us to another area. And if we've called your name out in Europe and you're to go to the 45th, get on that truck. And if you're on the 36th, get on that truck, and on the 3rd, stay on this truck. So we all went on 3 different trucks, and my 45th truck took off with me. And they said, all right, I knew then that I was assigned to C Company of the 157th Regiment of the 45th Division. So they just kept breaking you down until finally I got to the aid station of the 1st Battalion. And then I caught the ration truck that night, because they brought up your water and your rations at nighttime on Jeeps. I just caught a Jeep and went up that night. And they said, here's your replacement. And old Sergeant Mills Paul was there, and he said, okay, fella, come with me. And took me right up on the front of the front lines. And I slept that night up there, and I had my rifle with me. Next day, I started bang, bang, banging away. And we were in a stable position in April. All during April was a stable position pretty much. You just stayed in the hole all day and got out at night and got your rations, went to the bathroom, and did all your little movements around that you wanted to at night. The Germans were over there 150 to 200 yards away. We were all dug in nice positions. And all night long, the artillery came in on you, and all day long, you had small arms fire. So every day was a day for you to remember. Then after you got then we synchronized our watches, and we knew the next day that we were going to kick off and go. We were part of this stable position that we were in. So we just got up next morning, it's like we woke us up sometime. We all woke. Well, you had guard duty all night, so you was on an hour on and an hour, and you slept an hour. And the buddy that was in the hole with you, he was on guard duty. So it was a heck of a way to live, to try to get some sleep hour on. Time you got to sleep, he was shaking you, telling you the hour was up. So then we just all climbed out of those holes and started firing from the hip with our rifles and carrying machine guns, and we just walked right across no man's land. And the Germans got up. Most of them surrendered, and we just took off and just kept right on going. And we were about 7 or 8 miles from Rome, and we just kept going that day. And then every so often we would fight pretty hard during the day. And one day, the second day after the kickoff, I saw 3 tanks get knocked out. They hit 3 tanks, and the guys tried to get out of the tanks, and some of them were on fire when they were coming out. And it was a horrible sight to see that. It was, but for an 18-year-old kid, he was like a turtle. He wanted to see what was going on, and it wasn't long before the sergeant come over and put his foot on my head and said, "Soldier, if you want to live, better keep that head down." So I'd done pretty more than kept my head down to use my head a little bit wiser in performing trying to be as a good soldier. After they told us that the Pope declared Rome as an open city, which means no fighting, please. So the Germans withdrew on the other side, and we withdrew, and we went over for some R&R. We got a shower. First time I'd had a shower in a little over a month, and some clean underwear, and a new set of ODs, top shirt, got some clean clothes, and I felt good. So then we had about 2 weeks off, pitching horseshoes, playing badminton, stuff like that, little rest there in June. And then we went down to Salerno, which was south of Naples in Italy, for amphibious training and to make the invasion of southern France. So in August, it was like 15th or 17th, I don't exactly remember the day, we made the invasion. I was on the second wave. The front wave was a little boats that they took us on in on. They went the assault boats. The first wave hit the beach first, and then 3 minutes later, I hit the beach. And then we went through a seawall. We got through that. There was only a few Germans there. Then we marched up. Now I didn't get wounded. Of all that period of 3 or 4 months I spent on Anzio, the metal flew all around me, but nothing hit me. I landed in the middle of August, and on September the 25th, in the morning, about 10 o'clock one morning, I was got behind this tree, and a shell hit the tree, and the tree blew all apart. And all I got was shrapnel in my hand. I got 6 or 7 pieces of shrapnel in my hand. So the sergeant said, "You better go back," because it was bleeding a little bit. I would say profusely. It was bleeding, and one spot here and one spot here was pretty bloody. He said, first the medics had looked at it, and they said, "Well, there's a couple pieces in here ought to be taken out." And he said, "I don't know how to do that." So they put me on I walked back and caught a Jeep, and it took me back to the aid station. And there they took a couple pieces of shrapnel out of my hand, and they sifted sulfa powder in it, and they wrapped me up and said, "Well, your trigger finger can still work. Get the ration truck and go back up tonight." So the night of September the 25th, I went back up. We fought continuously every day, and one time in October, I got 2 days off to go back and get a shower and some clean clothes. This wasn't like any other branch of the service. You didn't know when you was going to get a new change of underwear or anything.
So let me just stop you. Give me your typical day that time. Give me your typical day. I mean, you'd be up.
You get up
doing the hour.
Yeah, you'd start getting up about 6 o'clock in the morning. But as I say, you were awake almost all the time because you was on guard duty. But I'd get up about 6 o'clock, and they had brought me my rations from the night before, and I'd just pull out the B box, which like a Cracker Jack box, and it had B on it. That was breakfast. So I'd cut it open, and I had 2 canteens on the back, so I just pour some water in there, and then in my rations was my instant coffee, and I'd make that. Your box was a waxed box, so you set fire to your box after you got everything out of it. There was some crackers in there, and there was some dextrose maltose tablets, which were like energy tablets, and they tasted awful, but you were hungry, so you ate them. But I had the breakfast, and you open your can of that whatever it might be, of either eggs or powdered eggs or whatever it might be, and you open the can, and you could hang it on with that key that you wound it. You could hang it right on your canteen cup, and you could hold your cup right over that that burning box, and it would heat your coffee up. And you did this. You didn't know whether a lot of times, 1 or 2 times, I had to run with this because they wanted to move out, so I had to leave my box burning, and my coffee was medium warm or something like this. But usually you get your breakfast. You'd have that before they'd move out at 7 or 7:30 in the morning. You started fighting at 7:30 or something like that in the morning. They'd move you out, and you moved in a column. You didn't walk side by side. You walked so many people behind each other, and over this to your left and to your right was a column, and you wound through. The officers had got their briefing the night before, and they knew which way for you to go and which way where you were supposed to line
Where
up.
did you sleep?
In foxholes, dug a hole every night. At least you'd dig a trench that was wide enough for you and deep enough that you were level. In case that tanks or anything come through, you would be safe from a tank. They always taught you that. So you just laid right there. Sometimes you'd dig, two of you dig together, and one guy would sleep, and the other guy'd climb out of the hole and be on guard duty. So each one of you carried a blanket on your back, and each one of you carried half of a tent. So you put the two together, and it made a tent, what they call tent halves. So you'd get up in the morning, and you'd fight, and then whenever stopped sometime that you thought around 12 or 1 o'clock, you would get out your lunch box and open it up and warm it up and eat it, drink some water, sometimes they had different like Kool-Aid or something in there for the lunch, and you eat that on the run. And one day a chicken got in the way, and we cooked the chicken, and we had to move out before it got too well done, but it was better than no chicken, so we all messed and folded in on that. Your helmet made a good pot, so you just took your steel helmet off, filled it with water, and threw the chicken in there, and one day we had some chicken. So, but then you did that until it started getting 5 or 6 o'clock at night. It started getting dark, and you'd find they would knew what the objective was that day. Sometimes we got to the objective at 2:30, sometimes 3:30, sometimes 4 or 5, whatever resistance we hit. Why we sometimes didn't move as fast as we should. So then we'd get a bivouac area for the night, and then the line just moved up like this and become a straight line at nighttime. Everybody was in a straight line at nighttime. And then you started guard duty, hour on and hour off all night long from 7 or 8 as soon as it was dark, all night long till next morning. It was, and sometime during the night, one person would go and get the rations, like for 6 or 7 people. Some nights it was me. I'd have to go back and get the rations, and some nights somebody else would have to go.
How far back do you have to go to get those?
Oh, it was probably a mile. It was depending on the terrain. If you had possession of a hill, and they'd come up pretty close to you, say a half a mile or maybe 300 yards, 400 yards, the Jeep would come, and stop, and then you'd know which way to go. Always seemed like we always went to our right to go down. I guess some people went to their left, but we always went down. It seemed like I always went to the right to go down to the end of the line. They'd tell you where to turn to go down to where the Jeep was and get enough rations I'd get 18 boxes for 6 people, and I'd get a whole mess of water. And most of the time, sometimes I took took canteen cups down and filled them at the big jug of water sitting on the back of the Jeep. You did that whenever they was required. Whenever the sergeant says, "Adams, go," I went, And that was the day. That was a day. And then on November the 9th came after I'd fought successfully from August the 15th or 17th. To November the 8th or 9th, and they pulled us back off the line. And they said, "You're going to get some R&R." So then we went back for 2 weeks of rest, because we'd had something like, 60, 70, 80 days of fighting every day like that. And so we got some fresh showers, got some coffee and donuts. And then on the day of the 24th, they got us together, oriented us, said tomorrow morning we're pulling out at 9 o'clock or 9:30, something, I don't know what time. And so we loaded on trucks on the morning of the 25th of November. And we got so far in trucks that day, and they told us to depart. So we got off the trucks. We walked in a straight line. Then we started moving into the position. And we were where we wanted to be by about 3 or 4 o'clock. We was up with the enemy at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 5 o'clock, it was in November, so it was getting dark early. And I was digging my hole, and a mortar shell landed about 5 or 6 feet behind me, went over my head and landed behind me and got me in the side here I got wounded in the side, just 60 days apart, 25th September to November the 25th. And so from then on, I watched the 25th. That was the day of the month. I had to be careful. So I went back that time, and it was a little serious. And then they give you penicillin every 3 hours, day and night. You got 8 shots of penicillin a day, and I took that and as long as you had a fever, they got ready to take the shrapnel out, and they took one piece out, and I heard I started to wake up, and I heard them say something. They said, "Wake up, Private, wake up!" And I woke up, and he said, "We're all through with you, and we got you patched up, but we left a little piece in there because it was into the rib, so we didn't want to disturb that." I said, "Okay," but it was a production line. It was just like a milking parlor for cows. They just brought you in and operated on what you wanted, and then the next guy moved in, and I laid there and watched them operate on 2 guys. I didn't like to do it, but I had my gurney was right there. I I was strapped on this gurney. So then he did all the work. Then I went to a general hospital, and I finished getting penicillin. After the 9 days, my fever broke. Then you have to take, I think, 3 or 4 more shots after they take your temperature twice a day, and then you have to take it till you get 2 successive times, no fever. Then I went off. Then I got up and walking, and so for a couple of weeks I was in the hospital, and I was waiting on patients that I give them bed pans. I played cards with them and walked around with all the other people. And I was in there for the Army-Navy game in 1944. Army-Navy game. I listened to it on the radio in the hospital, and there was a German officer in the hospital with me, along with a Frenchman, and they sat and played chess all day long. I used to go down, watch them play chess, and listen to the radio. Finally, Christmas came, and they said, "Well, it's time that you got discharged and get back to your outfit because it looks like you're ready to go." So Christmas Eve, they put me on a truck. What a night, being away from home, and took me to a Crpl depot again to be reassigned. They asked me what I wanted to do. I said, "I want to go back to the 45th. I don't want to go fight with anybody else except my buddies, you know." So they said, "Okay." So I had to spend 3 days, and I worked on the garbage truck and different odd jobs in the Crpl depot just to do something. Most of the time I worked 2 days, I guess it was, going around and picked up garbage. Yeah, and I wanted to do something anyway than just sit around there, and they had no games for you to play, no horseshoes, no nothing. So it was pretty dead time in a Crpl depot. And then finally, one morning they called us out and said, "The 45th truck's coming." So I hopped on the 45th truck, and then I went back to my outfit. I got back to my outfit on the 2nd of January of 45. And there I was, they issued me the clothes that they had in the hospital, so I just got low shoes like this. I didn't have combat boots like everybody else, and they sent me back with this. I didn't have the proper, I was cold. This was January in the Vosges Mountains, and it was miserable. And I didn't have all the clothes like the others had. These that were been fighting, they brought up all. So they said, "Don't worry, we'll bring them up to you." Well, the morning we walked in, and every day was another hill. Every day was going up and down snow-covered hills.
Were you still in those shoes?
Still in those shoes. Every night I took my shoes off, I took my stockings off, and I wrung them out and put them in my inside next to my body, and they'd be 80-90% dry the next morning. Then I'd put them back on again and walk in the snow again the next day. So I ended up with frozen feet, needless to say. And then on the morning of the 15th and I got the records with me of what happened, the 14th, 15th, and all through. And we pulled in a position that morning at 8:30, and we went up this hill, and by 8:30, 8:45, something like that, we got a directive to fire in any direction. And that can only mean one thing: you're surrounded, buddy. You're surrounded. So we stayed in that position the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and on the 20th, the Germans came over with a white flag and said, look, you guys got to be, and we had hardly any ammunition left. We hadn't had anything to eat for 5 days, and we were eating snow, and there was snow up past your knees, and you went and find where you could find clean snow, and so you had plenty of drink, that's all. You had no water, all you had was snow to eat, and nothing to eat. So one of the boys said, you got anything? I said, the only thing I got left is a little box of Colgate toothpaste. And so he and we ate some toothpaste, and I had some snow, and we got through that little meal in a hurry. And then they decided to make a run for it, and the first 2 guys got killed. There was 468 of us that got captured there in that group, and they just come over at 5 o'clock, and finally they come to our hole and said, okay, boys, let's go. But we had we took our guns
Who
on.
said that? Who was that? Said, okay, boys, let's go.
The Germans. These were the SS boys too, and we were a little scared because of the SS, because they weren't taking any prisoners. That was known. You don't want to get captured by the SS because those boys. But I guess they were tired of killing, because they said, you boys got nothing to worry about. We don't kill Americans anymore. Thank God, you know. And they took us in, and so they marched us to a barn that night. They pulled some of the boys because we'd been in that thing. I think there was 14 or 15 got killed in those 6 days we were on the hill. So they pulled 15 or 20 guys back to go back to the hill, and they buried those boys right there on that hill, they said, because it was about a week after that. One of the boys' name was Aldrich. He caught up with us. They trucked him up with us to put us with us. And then they marched us for a while, and then they put us on a boxcar. And they and these boxcars are only about half as big as these boxcars we got in the United States. And only half of you could lay down at a time. And they'd give you a little 5-gallon bucket, and that was your toilet, and 10-gallon bucket. And there was a little bit of straw in there, and there was 45 or 50 people in there. And you stood up as much as you could and sat down. It was dark in there. They had they closed the door, and then they put 3 strands of barbed wire around each car, and they locked it up there. And then once a day, they would let you out and give you a cup of soup and let you go to the bathroom if you wanted to while you was out, and then back into the boxcar, wrapped you up, and the train took off. You didn't know where you was going or nothing. And that time, I don't know, is 3 or 4 days and 3 nights or something like that we traveled, and we got to the first prison camp, which was 11B, and it was near a town, I think, called Fallingbostel. That's Fallingt Bostel, Fallingbostel, and that was the first prison camp. You didn't do anything in that prison camp. They just called you out every morning and every night. One time a day, they brought you some bread or some soup. You didn't get your choice. You never knew what you was going to get. But if they brought you a loaf of bread, they would assign 12 people to the loaf, and so you got an inch and a half a slice of bread. That was your ration for the day. I weighed about 155 pounds when I was captured, and when I flew me into England, and I weighed 115 in the hospital in England when after I was captured for that 100 and some days. Then after being in the first prison camp there for a while, 11B, I was sent then up near Limburg, Germany. I put me on the boxcar again, and we rode for 3 or 4 nights, and we landed up in Limburg, Germany. And pretty much Limburg, from London to Berlin, we were almost in a line from that. So all day long, you'd see the planes, the bombers, from about 9:30 to 10 o'clock. The bombers would start, and when you saw the last bomber go, well, here would be the front ones coming back again. And every other day, I had to go out on a work detail. But I didn't work on weekends because the guards didn't want to work on the weekend, so we didn't have to work. But for 5 days every other day, you had a buddy system. You slept on boards. There wasn't any mattress left in there, and there was no heat in our barracks. And this was February, March, April. Cold. the bunks were so short so that they caught you about the ankles when you tried to if you laid out straight. So you had to two of you had to lay in the fecal position together. And then if you wanted to turn over, you had to wake the guy up and turn over, because there wasn't room for you if one guy was laying in the fetal position to the left and the other to the right. And we had 2 blankets, but they were real thin, and we put one under us and put one over us. And we had the upper bunk in there, and we were awful lousy because we were dirty, and the lice used to go around our neck and around our belt. And after I was discharged for 2 or 3 years, you could still see the lice bites around the scars on my stomach and around the back of my neck. Every other day we did that. And then finally, April the 26th, 27th, we heard the roaring guns, and here came the English 1st or 2nd Army through with their big tanks. The English, they don't know how to fight. Here, the tanks come first, and then come the infantry. The Americans fight with the infantry first, and the tanks are in support. So, but the English, they do everything backwards anyway. So here comes the tanks first, and they rolled in, knocked the wires all down, and we were free. And they throwed us off this favorite thing that the Limeys had was oxtail soup. And we used to break the cans open any way we could, and then we'd eat it, walk over, get out of the way, throw it up, come back, eat some more, go over and throw it up. And that's what we did for 3 or 4 days, trying to eat this oxtail soup, and our stomachs weren't used to having anything in it, and it wouldn't take it. If you did have anything, even from what we had, everybody had the diarrhea. So the 2 things that you had was lice and diarrhea, and that was life in there. Then the English come in, and they kept us in the prison camp for about 3 days, and it was about March the 1st. They marched us out to the, while I was in there, Roosevelt died on April 13, 14, 15, and the Germans did march all the Americans out that day, and there was around thousands of Americans out there standing on the side of a hill, and we had a Army chaplain, Lieutenant Colonel, and he offered a prayer for our country and Roosevelt, and then they took us back into our barracks, and then we waited to be liberated. Soon we knew we were soon going to be liberated, because you could hear the artillery roaring all the time. But so then the English comes.
How were the guards?
How were the guards?
Yeah.
Oh, the guards were beautiful. Guards were great. Most of the guards were at least 60 years old. I don't think right across the road was a little Gestapo camp where Hitler was training his youth movement, and they were out there goose stepping every day. And they had a big warehouse there, and I used to have to go on your work detail. You helped with the work detail, getting the food ready for the Army boys or the guards and this young group. And the guards had been in the Russian front for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. They've been fighting Russia. So they were the most peaceful-loving old men that you'd want, you know. In fact, they even let us shoot their rifle. And one day, one of the guards, we talked him into, they could all speak English better than we could. Every German could speak English. Every one of the guards we had, every one of them could speak English. So you couldn't say anything, because one day somebody said something about these damn Germans, and walked over, soldier, Germans aren't damn. And we all like to, oh my God, you got to watch your tongue here. These guys speak English better than we do. So went out on this detail. We were out by the woods, and we had 2 guards, and one of them, he had to go to the bathroom. So he goes in there, and the other fellow was a little short fella, and we had some cans sitting out there, and where somebody had dumped them in the edge of this woods, and our job was digging holes, and we were burying rutabagas, which is a big turnip, and we were burying them for the people to put them in these. They had straw out there, and we'd line these. And I'd done it at home. We did the same thing. We buried our turnips back home, same way, and potatoes. So I knew how to dig these holes and line them with straw and dump the stuff in there. And we did that for farmers. So the other work details was cutting wood. We sawed wood, and as I say, we also worked in the warehouses. And this old guy, another guy, his name was, don't know now, lost his name. But he and we walked over, And we talked him out of letting us use our rifle, and we set these cans up like a tin, like in a triangle upside down, you know. And we said, let us have your rifle. Let's shoot this thing. So, boom, boom. Then somebody here, you take a shot. So we were shooting at these cans, and this old guy, he was back in the background. He'd gone to the latrine back there. He come running out. Oh, he didn't know what was going on. But they were nice guys. The guards were really, really nice. They didn't abuse us. I saw guys getting abused because they were trying to interrogate them and trying to get information from them. And they treated certain groups real bad. They, you know, in the cold, they'd take off their shoes and stockings and walk them out and stand them in the snow and try to get information. And the Americans just wouldn't give you a rank, name, and serial number. And they wouldn't. I never saw an American break. They'd stand out there in that snow, and all they would give was their rank, name, and serial number. And they'd say, okay. They'd finally bring him in, you know, get another one. And unfortunately, I never got took for interrogation. That was so we stayed in that prison camp until we got liberated, and then they took me to the hospital at Oxford, England, and I stayed in there till VE night, and then I went. They transferred me down to London to the Red Cross. Stayed in the Red Cross because I was waiting for a boat to come home, and I set sail sometime in early June. For New York, and I think I landed home on the 11th or 12th of June of '45 in New Jersey, and that kept me there one day, and the next day start thumbing your way to Delaware. So I landed home, and then I got sent to Atlantic City, and I spent 2 weeks there. Then I got an option: you can go home for 2 weeks, and be reassigned, or you can stay here. Well, I wanted to go home, so I came back to Delaware for 2 weeks. This was in September. I came back, and when I went back, they said, we're transferring you back to Fort Dick, Camp Lee, Virginia. So they sent me to Camp Lee, Virginia, and I got to come home every weekend. I had a 75-mile pass, but I talked to the sergeant. He said, well, they won't, it's a little more than a 75-mile radius. It's a little more than that, but if you want to take the risk, it won't be too much of a risk. Come on home. So I had a ramp, what they called a ramp pass, and it was almost give you a license to steal. It was revised Allied military personnel, and all it meant was you were an ex-POW is what it really meant. And the MPs let you get away with anything except murder. I mean, you could do almost anything, and they took pity because they knew we'd been through hell in a prison camp, so they let us get away. In London and also in the States, they knew about it. So I went home and traveled back and forth from Camp Lee, Virginia, every weekend until last week in October. They sent me back up to Fort Meade on a train, and in a couple of days they discharged me on November the 9th, so I completed about 16 months overseas, 2 years, 1 month, and 1 day of active duty. And that was, then I came back, I became a civilian on November the 9th at about 6 o'clock in the evening.
Then what did you do?
I went to work the next day as a clerk in a hardware store.
Whereabouts?
In Felton, and I worked I'd worked there the short period of time I worked there some while I was tilling the farm, and I got drafted, and the fellow liked my work, and he had written to me and told me that when you come out, I want to take you in as a partner. So I started to work for him on November the 10th, and I got married on December the 1st, and then on January the 1st, he took me in as a partner in the hardware store on equal basis. I thought that was real nice. And I worked in there for a while, and then I started to, he had to sell out, and my wife didn't want me to borrow the money to buy his other half, and so we both had to sell out. Then I worked for the guy in the hardware store till he got trained about 6 or 8 months, and then I sold insurance for a while, and then I went to work for Latex for 13 years, and I got laid off, and then in '63 I went to work and managed the Eastern States Agway store in Dover. and then ILC, which was a division of latex, was building the spacesuits, and I had been writing and working in purchasing, so I knew how to write terms and conditions and I just had to be edged up a little bit to learn how to do it for a government contract. So I then went and I went to work for on January the 1st or the 2nd in 1967. I quit Agway and went to work for ILC. For 8 years I worked for them, and then the contract ended up, and we had another contract, and it ended up, and we were down to some 40 people, and then I finally got dismissed again in December of '74. And for 9 months, it was hard for a 50-year-old man to go out and get a job and make the money that I needed to survive. But I landed a job as a plant manager for American Original Foods, was a clam company in Ridgely, Maryland. And I was a manager there for from '75 for about 5 years. So I think it was 79. And then then they need somebody in purchasing again in the home office in Seaford, Delaware. So they transferred me, took me away from as plant manager, and I went to work there. And there wasn't any retirement program, but when I got 63, I just didn't go to work one Monday morning. And I told them, of course, they knew I wasn't going to go to work, because I said, this is it, and I'm going to start drawing my Social Security. So that's, I went become a retired AARP individual, and I've been working on, because of my disabilities, my frozen feet, my post-traumatic stress and everything. I just finally have been declared physically unfit for employment, and I'm receiving my complete disability. I'm happily married. I have 3 children. My first one was retarded and is in a retarded home, but my other 2 children are very, very intelligent, and one's a school teacher and one is a computer whiz. And I have two grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. I'm very proud of all of them and all the work that they're doing. I'm 80 years old, and I don't have too much bad health, except I don't sleep well. As you get older and less goals in life and less things to do, it's becoming a little difficult to keep my mind occupied, and so I do have bad dreams and that kind of a line. Outside of that, I've enjoyed my life. And I don't know what else to tell you.
Maybe you ought to start eating more pizza.
I don't think I need too many carbs, you know. We ever thought about pancakes was a thing you think about in the prison camp and on the hill when we didn't have anything to eat for 6 days. Everybody said, hey, this morning we're having pancakes, you know, just teasing everything. There was 11 of us in a group there, and we used to think about, well, there's another stack of pancakes. It's about this high, it's this high. It kept growing on us. Yeah, I don't need anything to eat. I'm enjoying life very much right now. As a whole.
Are you still doing any farming?
No, I still have the farm, but it's a small farm. It was a truck farm. We raised all kind of vegetables: asparagus, strawberries, pear trees, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries, tomatoes, and we just sold like truck farm all the time. And when I came out of the service, I said this isn't for me, so that's why somebody else was had to farm down in soybeans and corn. So my grandfather had stopped working, but this time he was getting almost 80, so he stopped farming, and I went to work in the store. Farming you just couldn't make enough money in farming that way, so that's why I didn't do any more farming.
What do you think?
That was fantastic.
You know,
Do what?
That was fantastic.
Oh.
It's like just.
very animated.
Was it?
Oh yeah, it was great. You did great. I'm going to take you on the road.
Yeah.
I've told a story.
You know, often enough you listen to people from the time period telling stories, and it's kind of, well, okay, but you have so many details. It's
Well,
really
there's
interesting because of-
a lieutenant colonel that really loved the 45th Division. He was in the infantry. His father went to West Point. His son is graduated from West Point. But Hugh was a lieutenant colonel in the infantry, but he wasn't a West Point guy. And Hugh was very interested in the 45th Division. We had the most combat days of any outfit in the ETO. So it made for good writing and good stories. And so Hugh was very interested. He's been back to the hill I was captured on twice. And there's a boy that I was at his grandfather's funeral who was working for a ball bearing company. And of course, there's plenty of those in Germany. And he was working for a ball bearing company, working on fan motors for General Motors, I think it was. So they transferred him to the ball bearing company over in the homeland. He was only 20 miles from Ripensweiler. They had a car wash. That's where he went to Ripensweiler to get his car washed. So I'm at his grandfather's funeral, and his mother said, Richard was in the prison in Germany. And he said, oh, I'll go over and talk to him. So he come over. He says, Mother just tells me you were in the prison camp. I said, where were you? I said, well, I got captured near Ripensweiler. His eyes got like this. He said, that's where I just took my car to get to the car wash last weekend. So he got his mother and father go over there where he was in Germany, and I tried to describe. Then I put him in touch with this Hugh Foster, who's writing a book. I've been up there, and he's got a stack of papers about Ripensweiler that's about this high of our story of how we fought and went so many days without food and water and everything. And he's writing this book for our General Sparks, and Sparks was at when they instituted the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., Sparks was the prime speaker that they had, and he was my battalion commander at one time. But when I got captured, he was commander of the 3rd Battalion. I was in the 1st Battalion.
Who's writing the book?
Hugh Foster, and he lives in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Now, is he with you? I mean, is he one of your guys?
No, he's the age of my children.
Oh, okay.
His father and I are the same age. His father just passed away. But Hugh's there, and he is writing this book. They like Hugh so much, and he's so much interested in the 45th Division, that he is secretary of my regimental reunion group.
When's that going to be next?
Every September, it's going to be held in Washington, D.C. this year. Every year it's held in the East, and every other year it's in Denver, where the old man, General Sparks. My company commander name was Spears. That's why I have to stop once in a while to get Spears and Sparks straightened around, because Spears was my company commander. And I saw him, I thought, one day when I was walking, dead with his helmet laying. When you die, and you're killed in action, they put your helmet over your head. The medics does when he comes to you and sees you can't do it. He takes your helmet off, puts it over your face because people can't walk by and see a dead person laying there. It's not very heartening, when you're fighting and you see a dead person laying on the side of the road. So they tried to get him there till the litter barrack and get him discharged, so they cover his face with him. And I swore that was Spears laying there. Some 40 years later, all these years, I'm thinking he's dead. And one day I went to Hickory, North Carolina to my small reunion is a battalion. The 1st Battalion has a reunion, and this year.
Who got captured? No, there were 400 and some guys.
That was a little bit of A company, none of B. C, none of D. E, F, G, none of H, because that's heavy bar. A, D, H, and D, H, I, J, I, K, L. And M are heavy weapons. You have 3 rifle companies, and then battalions, and then the 4th Battalion is heavy weapons. That's 81 millimeter mortar and water-cooled machine.
So A, B, and C were captured?
A, B, and C were all captured, yeah. And then the
3rd battalion is that?
That's the 1st Battalion.
Okay.
The alphabet is A, B, C, 1st Battalion. A, B, C, D, 1st Battalion. E, F, G, H is the 2nd Battalion.
Okay.
Heavy weapons.
Your 1st Battalion.
There is no J company. We
So
never
most
had
of
a
the
day-
guys, most of the guys you have a reunion with then, the small reunion,
Yeah,
you guys were all
there's six,
captured?
there's 6 of us that are there that we captured.
Okay.
But I mean, we're dying off too, you know, at the rate of 1,200 a day. So my little reunion, my battalion reunion, which was consisted of three rifle companies, 3 rifle squads, and 2 light. When I got captured, I was in the 60 millimeter mortar, and we have 30 caliber, not the air cooled 30 calibers. So. That's what made up my company here. So they captured most of this here. So the guys that I see, I didn't know anybody on that hill that comes to my reunion. Of those 468, I see, as I said, at one time there was about 10 of us that got captured there. The rest of them were either replacements before me or after me. So,
You wanna do the thing?
Where was that hill where you were captured?
huh?
Where was
that
the hill?
Guys, it was, it had a number, and I think it was 410 or something like that. This hill was there near Ripersweiler. We passed through, we never did hit the town of Ripersweiler. We went to the east of it, but it was only like 2 miles southeast of us where we got captured. And we went to the,
Then do me a favor, we always film also each person just quiet.
I don't quite understand.
We film each person also just being quiet. So if you just be quiet now for a moment, and I just take a picture with this. And you can look right into the camera. One short moment. Thank you.
Okay.